Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start now our session 5, which is about expectations of CSD stakeholders. What have CSDs done to transform and meet expectations since 2 years ago? Have the expectations changed in the last 2 years? And if yes, how so? I will invite now the moderator, Bruce Butterill, to join me. Please, Bruce. And I will let you introduce all the panelists you have. For the participants, what I want to mention before giving you the floor, I had some questions how to use the app to ask questions. You go to the Whova. You go to Whova and you look for, yes, please, thank you. Yes, it's very easy, but it's better if I can say how does it work. You go to, on the app, on Whova, and you have a part of the app which is dedicated to community. And on this one, you're going to find Session5, Ask Questions. So you go to Whova, to Community, and you select the topic, which is Session5, Ask Questions. So you go to you go on it, and you just write your question and send it. And we are all allowed to see all the questions from all the attendees. So I will take some of them and come back 10 minutes before the end of your session, and maybe to share the questions and have this interaction with the attendees. Thank you very much. The floor is yours for 15 minutes.
Thank you very much. I expected he was going to introduce the panel, but I had a contingency in case he threw us a curveball. So, first of all, I'm Bruce Butterill. I'm the Executive Director of the America's Central Securities Depository Association. I'm here with my esteemed panel. Very pleased that everybody we asked to participate in the panel agreed, which was super for us. For Nandini and I, it is a return engagement after Hong Kong. I hope that says people felt we did a good job. So, just to introduce the panel very quickly, Nandini Sukumar, the CEO of the World Federation of Exchanges. John Sienna, Associate General Counsel from Brown Brothers Harriman. Gerard Hartsink, the Chairman of Glyph. Nasser Siddiqui, the Director of Corporate Finance and Markets for the Moroccan Capital Market Authority. And last but not least, Gorci Iris, from the Head of International Relations from MKK, the CSD in Turkey. So I feel we have a nice diverse panel to give perspectives on this subject. Just very quickly, I wanted to make an opening remark about why we feel that this issue continues to be relevant, even though I guess it was about 18 months ago we tackled this subject in Hong Kong. And the world continues to change. CSDs continue to diversify their business and have new customers, new competitors. Market infrastructures continue to integrate, and vertical silos, if you will, integrated infrastructures with stock exchanges, clearing corporations, CSDs, continue to emerge, and presents an ongoing and evolving challenge about how, when you have CSDs that become part of other corporate structures, maybe even become public companies, you are then confronted with this balancing act of balancing the needs, priorities, and interests of shareholders, issuers, your capital market, your participants, your customers, your partners in business, your employees, your shareholders. So really a tremendous set of demands and diverse set of stakeholders that have different needs and desires. So it's for that reason that we continue to believe that this is a relevant discussion point. That's all I'm going to say on the subject, but I'm going to give an opportunity to each of the panelists, if they choose to make an opening remark in terms of their perspectives on this subject. Nandini?
Thank you, Bruce, and what a pleasure to be here back again. I first joined you all in Hong Kong in November 2017, and how quickly the time has gone since then. I always want to start a session with all of you by saying that WFE represents exchanges and CCPs. So together with those of you in this room, the two organizations represent the entire trading cycle, and that is a powerful, that is really a powerful point for which us all to begin thinking about some of the issues that we'll come to later in the session. When Bruce invited us all to sketch a couple of minutes of opening remarks, what I wanted to do really was I wanted to think a little bit about what's changed since we last spoke back in 2017 in November, and what hasn't changed. And in reflecting about what has changed in the world since we last spoke, volatility has returned, and that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's typically a good thing if you're a market infrastructure, in that as long as your mechanisms are safe and stable and robust, and that's what we all do day in and day out. We work to ensure those structures are. Volatility means that everyone in this room sees the results of that flow through their infrastructures. 18 months ago, I don't think it doesn't feel like people were speaking as much about how we are 10 years on from the crisis, from the last crisis, and what will come next, where will it come, how will it come, why will it come, what will be the point of failure. So that's something else I think that we're all thinking about collectively together, even if none of us, I think, particularly know the answers. And finally, about 2 hours ago, we published our 2018 volumes for derivatives. And what I wanted to say again was, for the first time since we've ever published that report, which was in 2005, the volume of traded derivatives reached 30.1 billion. So that's a powerful number. A quick run through what hasn't changed. In some ways, that's easier. What hasn't changed, we have all collectively, both as an industry and as stakeholders to each other, focused on fintech, focused on new technology and how it can enable our business. We've had a lot of discussion already today, earlier in the room. We've thought a lot more, I think, now around the crypto space, and we're seeing new market structures beginning to arise. Tom Zeeb was chairing the previous session, and I see DTCC in the room, ASX is in the room. So I think that will be a really incredibly interesting space for all of us to work together collectively. Also, what hasn't changed is the ongoing concerns that all of us have around some of the capital requirements and the constraints and the squeeze on capital that's flowing out of Basel III and in the future Basel IV. That obviously is different for a CCP, for an exchange, and for a CSD, but we all remain collectively concerned and preoccupied with the issues arising out of that. We all care very much, and even more so, about cyber resilience remains at the top of the agenda. And finally, we care about market fragmentation. And I had a tough time allocating this into if this is something that has changed or if something hasn't changed. And I think on balance, we are more urgent in thinking about market fragmentation, regulatory dissonance or coherence, as we like to call it at the WFE. This is not only because of the G20 the Japanese G20 purpose behind looking at some of the issues arising from market fragmentation with fragmented regulatory jurisdictions, but also perhaps a little bit more of a testament of where we are. Geopolitics has played out more and more over the last 18 months. We are, I think, less clear maybe than we were in November 2017. So with that, I'm going to turn back to you.
Thank you. That was a superb survey. Thank you very much. It's difficult to know how to follow up on that, but I just want to first express my gratitude to WFC for a couple of reasons. One, I'm a stakeholder. I represent the stakeholders as the chairman of the European Committee of the Association of Global Custodians. So I'm very grateful to be able to express that perspective here. And I guess I would say I'm also a bit surprised to be invited because I'm a lawyer. So apologies, because I do give a bit of a different perspective than perhaps some of the perspectives you might have seen from others. What has not changed? I think that's a really important factor as we consider how the industry moves forward, in particular taking into account the advent of so much technological change. You know, we're sort of on the cusp of quite a lot. We're hearing that as a theme throughout this conference. And one of the things that hasn't changed for maybe 100 years are a lot of very archaic laws. It's not just regulatory dissonance, but it's also national law dissonance, national law incongruities and differences that I'm finding as a lawyer are never going away. So I think those issues are actually going to be quite present as we look at how to implement DLT, how to implement blockchain, and how we implement current legislation that we are seeing put into effect in places like Europe. I'm closest to what's happening in Europe. We've seen a lot of legislation that impacts financial market infrastructure in Europe, and I've been quite active on the legislative agenda, more so in Europe than in the United States, despite my accent. But just discontinuities between the United States and Europe are there. And I think it's also a time for the legal community to add value and be a contributor to how we collectively move forward in this entire discussion. I think that my perspective has been very much as a stakeholder, trying to encourage ways for stakeholders, participants, and the CSD community to work together on these matters, because we have certainly seen it's not just a question of competition, it's a question of collaboration to ensure a really an effective way to work through some of these issues as they present themselves. So I'm, again, very grateful to be here to help address these points, and I'll certainly address them a little bit later. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gerard Hartzink. I'm the chairman of the Clive board. In our board, also Monica Singer, sitting in front of here, joined us last year. We received a concrete mandate of the Financial Stability Board on behalf of the G20. We started in June 2014. If you go to our website, available in 14 languages of the G20, you might find a lot of documentation on the program, but also the data currently of around 1.4 million legal entities around the world. Also on your smartphone. So if you like to read Arab and have a search on our website, free of charge, free of registration, that's possible. Why is it relevant for the securities business, not only the CSD part, but also the CCP and the trading part, on exchange or OTC? The quality of the data is becoming more and more mission critical for a lot of private purposes, risk management, collateral management, liquidity management, for financial action tasks for AML, counter-terrorist finance issues, but also for the public sector. Of course, it started with the public sector, but more and more the data are also used by the private sector. Our mission and our strategy is we have no mandate for the public sector, what to do or not to do. It's excluded in our statutes. However, facts are that over 80 pieces of legislation are already done in all sorts of jurisdictions. Look at our website. It's not only regulatory reporting, more and more central banks use the lei also for the real-time cross-settlement system, like the Bank of England recently announced that, ECB, Fedwire, and also the Reserve Bank of India made it mandatory for borrowers if you have a loan over 5 million, and I know that the amount will go down. So for the private sector, we started not only for the capital and money market to make it valuable, the lei program, but also for banking. Think about trade finance, KYC, onboarding of customers. Third, for the supply chain, with full support of International Chamber of Commerce and GS1 taking care of the barcode organization worldwide, and for the digital economy. So the board decided to have a research study that will be public probably in October as planned, with a famous company partner, and we work hard to get not only 1.4, but the ambition is at least to have 40 million legal entities around the world that have an LEI, which is very strong for any cross-border business, not only in the capital and money market, but also for the supply chain and for the digital economy.
Thank you, Bruce. Good afternoon to everyone. From the regulator's perspective, CSDs play a major role in terms of market development, systemic risk, and financial stability. So regulators' expectations focus on two important dimensions. First one is security, and the second is efficiency. This involves setting up and complying with rules of governance, risk management, and operational reliability, and of course, rules of regulation and supervision. The rules adopted must be inspired by the best standards in the field, such as international standards, PFMI. In this area, and as an example, Maroclear has made significant progress in recent years, putting in place tools and solutions in line with the best international practices. Also, I think that CSDs must take a very proactive approach in terms of technological innovation to be real players in this field. Thank you.
So good afternoon. Actually, my colleagues covered all of the items that I can talk about, but just to give you a brief note on what has changed from the last WFC. In 2017, we were talking about the importance of the cybersecurity and the use cases of blockchain. And this year, we are still talking about the same issues, but now we are discussing them with more consciously and with more knowing state of mind. So maybe in 10 years, we will be talking about the decentralized structure of the CSDs, but the AI will be performing the core CSD functions without any manual intervention. So what I'm trying to mention here is that the industry is evolving and the people's and the investors and the stakeholders' requests and needs are changing continuously. So I believe this year and in the coming years, we will be learning to have them in our daily lives and in our operations.
Thank you very much. In my opening remarks, I referred to what is a continuing trend, and that is the vertical integration of infrastructures. And it's clear, managed properly, there can be tremendous benefits, but there's also potential less positive aspects to vertical integration. I wonder if I might start off by asking Nasser to share his perspective, because I believe you have a vertically integrated market infrastructures here in Morocco, to share the regulator's perspective in terms of what that means to the market and how stakeholders are served with that kind of structure.
By centralizing certain activities, vertical organization allow market infrastructure to efficiently manage their risks and even in some instances reduce or eliminate some of them. However, this activity centralization concentrates risks and creates correlation between them as well as between participants. Thus, among the main benefits we can mention the simplicity of organization and quick decision making, better integration of structures and activities, the better convergence of information systems, control of value chain and cost. But on the other hand, the drawbacks include risk of non-competitiveness of some activity, the risk spreading due to links between the vertical organization infrastructure, risk of management autonomy loss at the level of subsidiary, and risk of conflict of the interest between entities that promote profitability and those that promote risk management. In our markets, we have opted for vertical organization, and this organization should be deployed in the coming year by integrating the stock exchange, the clearinghouse, and the central depository.
Thank you, Nasser. Nadine, I wonder if I might ask you to share the perspective from the exchange point of view, given that in many cases, and I would even say potentially the majority of cases, this kind of vertical integration is being led by stock exchanges. Can you share with us perspective from the exchange point of view?
It's actually a really interesting question. The industry I represent, the exchanges and the CCPs, have lived this question actually for quite a long time. And within the WFE membership, we have members that are standalone. So for example, within the CCP, we represent standalone CCPs such as DTCC and the OCC. And then of course, we also represent groups that integrate, that control the CCP, or where it's housed within the exchange grouping itself. And one of the things that we have come to the conclusion on, we don't have a view on what is the appropriate structure for governance of an exchange or a CCP. We do not have a view saying that vertical is good or bad, or that horizontal is good or bad. What we really think about, and what we all, I believe, think about, is what structure allows for the market infrastructure to be most effective in its role. And I think that's really the point, right? So you have, there's a lot of debate. Some of it is self-interested, some of it is not. And I think that if you are a market infrastructure that owns the vertical pieces, be that all of them or some of them, you do have to demonstrate to your stakeholders, to your customers, and to your members, sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not, on an ongoing basis, that you have their trust and that you deserve their trust. I just wanted to say one thing, though, in terms of the incentive structure. I think in the market infrastructure world, your incentive is to keep your reputation for market integrity and for purity absolutely top-notch. So there is an alignment of incentive between doing the right thing and ownership. So I think a lot of the debate about vertical versus horizontal sometimes just gets a little lost for no necessary reason. What we all need to care about is, are we having structures? Do we operate structures that are performing as they should be performing? And are we aligning the incentive structures right? And I would say to you that as long as everyone feels able to answer both those questions with a yes, then I think we're okay.
I guess that is, in fact, the magic question. Can they answer with a yes?
I think we should all be trying to answer with a yes. And I would say that pretty much, I think that yes is the right answer. It is the answer we all want. And for most people, the answer isn't a difficult one. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's, I think, a challenge that infrastructures face every day in the management of the of the
Yes,
business.
and somehow there seems to be this debate that suggests, well, oh my gosh, this is a conflict of interest. We all manage multiple conflicts of interest every day in the course of our daily lives, in the course of the daily, in the work that we do. So why is it that there is never a good, it's never acceptable to say both are okay, as long as you can define the answer as appropriate? Why do we, feel unable to kind of put this one to bed?
I hear you. If I may, Gokce, in the context of your job in Turkey and I'm certainly familiar with the amount of diversification that your particular CSD has undertaken. As CSDs diversify, that can periodically, if not frequently, bring them into potentially competitive situations with owners or participants. Can you share with us what the attitude or the experience has been in your market or others that you deal with in terms of this potential friction that arises as CSDs diversify their business?
Yes, thank you. Actually, CSDs, while preserving their positions to provide a secure, transparent, and smoothly operating environment, they have to cope with the ever-evolving dynamics of the industry, and as well as the changing needs and requests of their stakeholders and the investors. The CSDs have to follow, learn from, and adapt themselves to the technological developments and build new business cases around them. It is no longer possible for CSDs to survive or stay in the game only relying on the core CSD functions. And with the help of the latest developments in the emerging technologies like big data, AI, robotics, and automation, CSDs are equipped with these tools to further innovate and diversify their businesses. And these efforts will inevitably put them in direct or indirect competition with their participants.
Thank you. We have prepared 2 questions for the audience response. I wonder if we might have the first question up for response, and I'll give the panel an opportunity to comment on the results. Do we have the question in the app? Can someone nod if they see it in the app for a response? No? It's not? Okay. So until it is, we'll carry on, but ask if you could open up the first question. Maybe I could turn to Gerard at this point. This morning we had a couple of panels on technology, and certainly technology continues to rapidly change our environment, and with that there has to be an evolution in terms of what our stakeholders are expecting. You care to share your perspective on how you see that impacting stakeholder expectations?
Yeah, in particular, listening to the 2 previous panels, I wondered what is the outcome of the new technology? They will, and I agree with Chris in the panel, they will happen one day. It's only when. In the end, it should deliver better service for the customers, less cost and or less risk. But I also understand changing the current infrastructure to a new world creates migration problems, and that is always very complex based on my experience. So are the partners in any of those ecosystems, such as the CSD ecosystem, really prepared for a change? I remember some of those similar movements that the larger players said, you are ruining our business case. So being more efficient or less risky is not always beneficial for all the players. On paper, yes, but in practice, not always. So if you analyze the stakeholders of CSDs, of course, the exchanges have more and more a role. The world becomes more and more vertical again, apart from the horizontal dream in Europe for many years. The investors are very important, large and small, the banks as intermediary and brokers, and the regulatory environments. So I think it's very important to listen also to the expectation of those stakeholders, what they expect from a CSD. So for me, it is clear that data are very important for any of those stakeholders. CSD is very well positioned on the data, who is who owns whom, who owns what, the ISIN number. So there is a lot of opportunity. I'm not so convinced that blockchain will easily realized, and for the following reason. Are in any of the ecosystem all partners prepared to move forward? And if you have a complex ecosystem like a CSD ecosystem, is there really a lot of benefit for the participants? Less cost, less risk, etc. And there is still a lot of standardization to do, because many of the very large firms will be partner in multiple FMIs, not only on the security side, but also on the payment side, on CLS, and they cannot afford that standards are created per CSD or per exchange or per payment platform. So a lot of work has still to be done to achieve that point. In the ISO community that is currently on the agenda, there is a team, ISO TC 307, I represent the Dutch community. We talk about governance of a blockchain arrangement. We talk about data, quality of the data, security, on governance of a blockchain arrangement, but also on interoperability, because it's a dream that there will only be one type of blockchain technology. There will be multiple, and the very large firms, that is already happening today. Carrefour openly said at a very large event, Carrefour, the retailer in France, that they participate in 2 blockchain arrangements, but they are not interoperable. So that need will come on the table, and that should be solved by the industry.
Thank you, Gerard. John, in the context of Gerard's comment regarding data and how technology is evolving from the global custodian point of view, who are enormous stakeholders in the world of CSDs, are depositories doing enough to protect that data? And if they aren't, what should they be doing differently?
Well, I think, first of all, I completely agree with Gerard's comments. I think they're very well put. And before I jump into that, I guess, you know, in the participant community, we have to have a little humility ourselves, certainly, in understanding that we are not the only stakeholders. Obviously, there are the issuers, there are the beneficial owners, and there are others. And so we feel those pressures as well. And so we realize that we need to you know, cooperate and collaborate as much as we can to realize these goals. I think the concern that I might have been sort of developing over the last couple of years has been more around how a lot of these initiatives are sort of, to my mind, happening in parallel. I think the real challenge will be to bring them together. As Gerard just mentioned, you know, something that's going on in the ISO standards world. We've got the Shareholders' Rights Directive also touching on precisely the same issues, sort of happening in parallel. We've got collateral management task forces and the ECB happening in parallel. Are we going to bring this all together? I think that is a real challenge. I think these things will happen. DLT will happen, but the challenge is very big, absolutely. And so I think that argues in favor of a very high need to find a way to have a dialogue to sort of bring these things together. Otherwise, I think it's going to be a great deal of confusion. On cyber, I think the way I guess I look at it in terms of sort of a horizontal and vertical paradigm as well, but not in the same way we've been discussing. I think of what's been happening in cybersecurity as sort of a question sort of on a horizontal basis about what's happening across financial market infrastructure, sort of interoperability arrangements and the like. How are they interacting with each other? And I think that's absolutely crucial to sort of focus on, given the increased integration we're seeing in the world and the increased expectation of, you know, around cross-border investment, cross-border capital flows. I manage our Asia legal function. I've been, you know, pretty heavily involved in what's been going on with Stock Connect. That obviously is, you know, something for the future. That's certainly going to develop much more. And so we've seen, by way of example, the efforts sort of advocated by the Asia Development Bank on creating sort of a common understanding on cybersecurity. There was a conference last year, and I think we were off to a very good start in understanding some of the challenges that have to be addressed to to facilitate a common understanding around expectations across these different market infrastructures in different jurisdictions. So again, I'm a lawyer, so I'm quite conscious of the fact that, you know, it's one thing when you're addressing national law and your local regulator's expectation around managing cybersecurity risk. But I think, as was recognized in this task force that was created last year, and the report that was produced, we now need to move on to really understanding how cybersecurity risks are to be addressed on a cross-jurisdiction basis. Really understand what are the implications for finality of settlement, what are the implications for you know, differences in change under local law that might have a different impact from the say where the issuer CSD is, for example. So I think we really need to facilitate that kind of conversation, and I think that's been recognized and that discussion's underway. But I feel we need to sort of move beyond aspiration to actual implementation, which means the dialogue really has to begin in earnest. Sort of in the vertical view of the world, well, that's obviously the financial market infrastructure and the participants, who are us and others. And on that, I would commend to you, if you haven't seen it, the ISA paper that was produced in October 2018, just last year. It's an excellent paper. A lot of people, I think, in this room contributed to that paper. And it's, I think, a really very good description of cybersecurity risks, how they might be addressed through the chain. CSDs are very much a crucial part of that conversation. And it's quite clear that there needs to be, again, continued dialogue around managing expectations, sort of both upward and downward in the chain. So one of the things that the ISA paper calls attention to is the fact that any security services provider needs to recognize that it has to understand who its vendors are and the risks associated with those vendors, and who its clients are and the risks associated with those clients. So from a participant CSD perspective, we're on the flip side of that coin. I think the ISA recommendations are no different in that respect. With that.
Thanks, John. Can I try once more? Do we have the first question in the app?
Yes.
Okay.
We have two questions. One is, how does vertical integration correlate with transparency in pricing?
That's not the question. That's a question from the audience, not the question in the app.
Oh, you're asking what
We had two questions for the attendee response, but I haven't.
Yes, okay.
got
We're going to try
confirmation.
to ask the colleagues to give us the questions.
Have we got it in the app or no? So it is there. Okay. The first question. Do we have it to put up on the board? No. Technology. No. So I'm going to carry on since we're in dead space. Maybe we'll get an answer to that. I just want to come back to one of the issues that I personally believe is key in managing stakeholder expectations. And maybe I'll ask Nandini to respond to this first, but I'll open it up to the group as a whole. The vast majority of market infrastructures in the world now are for-profit entities, and that brings with it certain implications and challenges for managing the expectations of stakeholders. And I just wonder if you'd share your view on what those implications are, and how you feel infrastructures are managing to those expectations.
Thank you. It's a complex question, and it's a complex answer, I think, because we don't have a one-size-fits-all approach or an answer. You can't say, I think that one model is good and another model is bad. And I feel it's one of those instances where the debate, too often it comes down to a this is good and that is bad response, and that's just not the the arguments in favor of either being for profit or listing, we believe that companies that come to market on a stock exchange conform to higher standards of transparency, good corporate governance, they are accountable, et cetera, et cetera. So when we, as an industry, and I'm talking about exchanges specifically because exchanges are the ones that are typically listed on their own markets or not, are often asked this question. I think that instead of just saying, no, it's great, or no, it's terrible, we shouldn't do it, we do have to go back to the fundamental question, which is, are we doing our jobs effectively? And if so, if we are, that's great. How can we answer our stakeholders, who include customers, organizations in adjacent industries, and I would classify the CSD community as a classic, one, you all are distinct, but affiliated, obviously closely affiliated. The regulatory community, increasingly the political community, how do you satisfy them that you're doing your job effectively? If you can, that's okay then. You can carry on doing what you want. If you can't, then you do have to address what is essentially, you do have to address that. You have to say, you have to make clear why the model that you are espousing is the appropriate one. And I think so much of the debate kind of tends to harp on one model good, another model bad. And I think if the CSDs could maybe seek to learn one lesson that the exchange community has lived, it is not to get down, not to pull yourselves down the rabbit hole of endorsing one particular model. It's to go back and understand and answer the question, and the question is, what is the purpose? What is the purpose of your industry? What is the purpose of your organization? And two, are you doing it effectively? You mean we've got the questions now? Yeah.
We got 65 responses to the first question. That was, the expectations of our organization stakeholders has changed in a material way over the past 2 years. So we have 60%, almost 2/3 saying yes, and that's basically the expectation that I would have had to response to that question. Gerard, I think you had something to offer
on the previous topic. Based on my experience in the securities and the payment industry, many of the FMIs were started with encouragement of the public sector, and over time they started as a utility, but some of them became more a profit-oriented organization, also to have enough funding over time. And some of the stakeholders, shareholders, did not want to continue with having a stake in such an FMI. I think that, as Nandine already mentioned, it's not good or bad having Model A or Model B, but whatever the model is, always the ecosystem should be taken into account. And I have seen several interventions by the public sector that in the boards there should be enough independence, not only players, the key players of the industry, taking care of the whole ecosystem. So it's not good or bad, neither on the security side, on the payment side, what type of model is, but the ecosystem, PFMI principle 2 is very important for that. How the governance is organized is very important, because that could also have a huge impact on the innovation agenda of any FMI.
Thank you, and yes, I agree, because one of the things I believe that as an industry, we are all sort of sometimes nervous about talking about it, and we should, I think, have the confidence to say that if you're a market infrastructure, and whether you're for profit or whether you're listed or not, in the case of an exchange, I mean, sometimes you take decisions that are better for the long term, and you aren't, solely focused quarter by quarter. Sometimes you make an investment decision that takes time to play out, and you have to talk to your stakeholders about that. But I think sometimes, especially in the last decade, when we've had the ecosystem has evolved, right? If you were an exchange before MiFID opened the door to the MTF model, etc. So people have become, I feel, almost reticent about explaining that, they make that as market infrastructure, some of the decisions you make are for public good. They are long term. So you maintain aspects of that social purpose that you were set up for, that utility purpose that you were set up for. The other question about innovation I really liked. I mean, I thought it's a great point, and we should all make it more. You know, we all need to innovate, but we also all need to ensure that we are resilient, robust, stable infrastructures. Our purpose is resilience in addition to innovation. And as an industry, I think that we are the first person, the market infrastructures, and I'm grouping you all at the CSD in with the exchanges and the CCP, we're the first person that the regulator calls when there is anything happening in the market. It may not be specific, it may not be the responsibility of the particular market infrastructure, but the regulator calls. And we always have to remember that we take those calls, we must take those calls, and we must respond to them. So I think in the kind of, the excitement about innovation, I think sometimes people are nervous or reticent sometimes to say you have to balance innovation with responsibility. We at the WFE, we put out a position paper like 2 years ago, I think, on some aspect of fintech market structure, and a ton of people said to me, well, y'all were very balanced. Does that mean y'all are not in favor of innovation? And I said, what has the world come to where a balanced statement is considered not in favor of innovation?
Yeah, maybe if I can just address that a little bit. I think from a stakeholder perspective, I guess it's not, what I've picked up on in my role is not so much fear of innovation by market infrastructure or concern about even competition necessarily. I think what we need to talk about is the pressure that intermediaries feel, and we feel regulatory pressures, we feel other pressures as well. I think one of the issues we have is that some of those pressures we feel are not entirely consistent with some of the public policy goals that you're describing from a market infrastructure perspective. To some extent, sometimes they conflict, actually, and that's where we really need a dialogue just to sort of work through those issues. I think the more we can do that, the better, because I believe that there's a way to get there, and for the most part, I've seen, and I've been participating in very collaborative discussions that are absolutely in good faith, but some of these pressures are different. I mean, the U.S., for example, there's a lot of the focus is on transparency, sanctions compliance. So we serve a public good as well in facilitating, government policy, if you will. In Europe, there's a different perspective, of course. We've got, focus on investor protection, transparency, shareholder rights, different issues that flow through us where market infrastructure is obviously key, critical to satisfaction of our obligations. So I think what I'm saying is that is sort of to encourage that dialogue, that collaboration, and some CSDs do a better job at that than others, of course, which is to be expected. But particularly with the advent of massive technological change that will impact all of us, I think the time is probably more ripe than ever to put some framework around that discussion, probably more so than we have in the past.
Thanks, John. I'm sensitive about
Sorry.
the time, and
Sorry.
I know there's one or two questions from the audience that I would like to get in just as we wrap up here, because we're right up against it. Do we have a question from the audience that we could address?
Yes. We have the first one, I used it a couple of minutes ago, which says, how does vertical integration correlate with transparency in pricing? So if you can maybe answer this one. And I have a second one, which actions should be carried out by regulations to facilitate the adoption and the expansion of new technologies across the CSD world?
Wow. That's a big one.
Next conference.
Yes, possibly. If I may, I'm in my role of moderator going to take a liberty and wade in on the first question. It's one of the areas that I have done a fair amount of work in over my career, and that is transparency and regarding pricing. And it's very interesting to see how in vertical infrastructures around the world, the different attitude towards how they structure their pricing in that vertical, whether it's being done from a protectionist point of view or recognizing how the what the market priorities are of the competition, but it is really quite incredible the diversity of pricing that we see within the chain of execution through clearing and settlement in infrastructures around the world. Now, fortunately, we have regulation and general practices that people are being very transparent about the pricing. But when you look at that pricing, it is very, very different in terms of the way various market infrastructures have structured their pricing. I think we're at the limit of our time, so should we be a wrap?
Congratulations,
No.
because managing time is something that could be called efficiency. Thank you very much. I want one now to thank you, all of you. And before leaving the stage, I just want to have two announcements, maybe. The first one, I would want to invite Redouane from Maroclear. I think he's here. Is he here? Yes. Can you join me, please? Can you use your mic? And the second, I would want to host Monica Singer. Would you want to join me, please? Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Monica. You can join us. Please come here. So we had some news to share with the audience today about kind of announcement, something that has been achieved, and we can say that something very interesting to share. What is it?
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. Hope you are doing well, and the conference content, your stay, the organization meets your expectation. Please don't hesitate if there is any request to ask the Maroclear team. They will be more than happy to serve you. So for the announcements, in behalf of Madame Benis, the chairperson and CEO of Maroclear, I am proud to announce that we have achieved a successful test on one POC, or the POC on blockchain. So this POC, this POC is based in blockchain, and it's inspired from the instant payment. So we have just asked a question, if we can do instant payment on blockchain, how do not use the smart contract to assure the DVP on the cross-border settlements? Because as you know, there is some challenges for the cross-border settlement, especially in cash. So the concept is very simple. We use the blockchain to tokenize the securities and also use coins for the cash. One coin that have some equivalence in local currency in both countries. So this POC has been successfully tested with the support of our decade partnership with TCS. So I will ask Mr. Vivek, VP of TCS, to join me for more information. Thank you.
Yes, please join us. Thank you and congratulations.
And also I want to ask Mr. Khaldoun, the CEO of Kuwait, with the CSD of Kuwait was in the demonstration of the testing, and they have accepted volunteer to support us for that, to give to this demonstration a real reality.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Very welcome, gentlemen. Draw near. Draw near. Come on here.
First of all, I'd like to thank Maroclear for this wonderful hosting. I've enjoyed my time here. It's my first time to Morocco. It's not going to be my last time, actually. You've been great hosts. Thanks to Ms. Fathia and all the entire team for being so friendly and so hospitable. We are very pleased with this announcement that was made today. It opens up and explores, different opportunities using this blockchain. In our ambitious strategy in Kuwait, we want to explore this technology, which we need to invest in early on, basically. Everybody's talking about blockchain, but realistically, not many do actually take the next step. We actually did this announcement today, and we had been talking to Maroclear and TCS about actually taking the next step of it. I mean, this technology is not new anymore. I think it opens up opportunities, operational efficiencies, and it provides us with a platform to provide new services to the Kuwaiti market and the region. We are very pleased that this is the first transaction that has been made in the region between Maroclear and Kuwait Clearing Company, and hopefully it's not going to be the same. We do explore and look forward to opening up this network and actually joining more of the CSDs into this network.
Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Khaldun. Thank you, Ridwan, Madam Benis, for what we could achieve. This is really, quite significant. Just a couple of words from our side. Our goal in this is to come up with practical approaches to implementing technology. Sometimes when we look at technology, we try to see how it will completely disrupt and disturb what we do in a sense. We look at it in a change the world kind of approach. But for us, as TCS, we see it as a responsibility to bring technology in a form in which it is practical, that it can coexist with the billions of dollars of investments that banks and capital market institutions have made over a sustained period of time and continue to make. Coexistence with existing systems and to be able to bring innovation along with that is where we believe that the future lies. So that's the kind of approach that we are taking, and we are quite proud of what we could achieve here. Thank you.
One word just to conclude. How many people worked on that?
See, on this team itself, it's a fairly small team. When I say small, we have about 60, 70 people working on all these technologies. Across TCS, we have about 700 people who work on blockchain. It is not a lot TCS has 450,000 employees. So in that, 700 is a fairly small number in such a large company. But 700 people who can do work on blockchain, we believe that very few organizations in the world can have that. So I think we are investing in it. We have to take these bets on the future. So that's the kind of numbers that we have.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. So, yes, we want to thank you very much. Yes. Thank all the panelists for this wonderful panel we had. Thank you very much. And you have some presents from Maroclear. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Monica, join me, please.
Okay, so here comes what's going to happen now. I can see everybody's here. So please, when you leave this room, don't disappear. I want you to go straight to the breakaway sessions, okay?
Yeah, we have 2 breakaway sessions now.
Yes, and they're not here. They are downstairs in this building. And there will be signs showing you the way, okay? And the only concern I've got is that I'm not too sure that everybody understands what the breakaway session is about, okay? So what we created is a safe space. There are going to be round tables of 8 people. You can sit anywhere you want, but please don't sit with a friend. Sit with someone you've never met before, because the whole idea is that you want to share information and learn from each other, okay? You promise?
Okay, we need diversity, and this is something very useful.
Okay, very important, okay?
So
now, okay,
maybe mention also that we're going to have a coffee in front of the rooms, and everything is available there.
Yes, you can.
So it's
I
easy.
haven't finished. Let me finish.
Yes.
Okay, so then breakaway session number 1 will be moderated by Dominique. Thank you, Dominique. So he's going to...
Where is Dominique? Okay.
Okay, so he's going to ask you, he's going to put questions, but I said to Dominique that he really must not be too, demanding, that you can spontaneously, in each table, decide what you want to do. He can guide you, but in reality, I want spontaneity, and I want the topics to come out depending on whatever you want to talk about. this is the chance where you share your knowledge with other people. So breakaway session 1 is the current problems you're facing. Breakaway session number 2 is more about the future. So if you care more about learning about blockchain or robotics or cyber or what AI, go to breakaway session number 2, which Vivek is going to moderate. And therefore, what will happen is that we're going to appoint someone at each table to chair the table. You will get to manage the conversation, take notes, and then feed all that information to Vivek and to Dominique, who tomorrow have to do the report back to the plenary. So I'm already saying thank you so much for your participation. Please don't go shopping, okay? Thank you.
No, it's not time for shopping.
No,
and it's not
Where?
time for shopping. It's not time for the swimming pool.
No, exactly.
It's time for the breakaway sessions,
Yes.
and we need you in the two rooms. Thank you, Monica. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks a lot, and let's go.
Okay, good. Bye. I'm gonna